The following program contains shockingly brilliant insights. If you suffer from a lack of dark sunglasses, Randall may not be right for you. Check with your optometrist.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. The only TV host arrested more times than Mahatma Gandhi, Randall Terry.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yeah, baby. Part of the church militant. How about you? Oh, I love you. Today's program, ladies and gentlemen, it's literally going to be something you're going to want to archive, send to your pastor, send to your priest. You know why? In this show, we have proof that the devil exists. And we know that he came through a certain senator from Texas. And we've seen who has been shackled by Beelzebub himself. We've got photos and stuff. Today's program brought to you in part by Caesar, putting his heel on the back of the church's neck for nearly 2,000 years. And by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, offering their neck to Caesar as long as they get a tax-exempt status. Friends, we're going to talk about the tax-exempt status today from beginning to end, give you a history like you've never seen or heard before. And when the lights go off in your head, you might just join me in boycotting certain 501c3 tax-exempt organizations. Just watch, just listen. Let's set the stage with my good friend, Sir Reginald Blink. Just turn the thing on. I got something to say. Can you imagine someone coming up to John the Baptist saying, John, don't preach against Herod. You're going to lose your tax-exempt status. But we would not have the gospel. Or someone coming up to the clergy in England saying, don't preach against King John. But we would not have the Magna Carta. Or people coming up to American preachers saying, don't preach against King George III. What? We would not have an America. These lily-livered, panty-waist, so-called preachers in America who are groveling at the feet of Caesar. You know what they're like? They're like the preachers in England. Yeah, the ones that bowed down to Henry VIII and became the Church of England. Hey, if you got a brain, you ain't cut a deal with Caesar. You cut a deal with the devil. Welcome to the program, friend. The 501c3 tax-exempt status. Is it good? Bad? Somewhere in the middle? Is it something that was created to help churches and individuals? Or was it something created with malintent? My purpose in today's program is to give you something that is an evergreen, something that can be used and referred back to for years to come. We're going to look at the history of the 501c3 tax-exempt IRS status, what it meant at the beginning, what it means today, and what it has done to the church militant. What I intend to prove, and it's up to you, the watcher, the viewer, the listener, to decide if I have successfully proven my case. What I hope to prove is that people who have submitted their organization or their local church or their big denomination even to the 501c3 yoke, whether deliberately or innocently and inadvertently, have literally submitted a certain area of their lives, not to God, but to Caesar. I aim to prove that the 501c3 tax-exempt status has turned a very large portion of the church militant, as we are called to be, into the church wussy, the church submissive, the church frightened schoolgirl. So, what we're going to do is use as a jumping off point a statement made recently by Kelly Steele. Kelly Steele is the spokesperson for Senator Harry Reid. Harry Reid is in a life and death struggle for his political career against Sharon Angle. Kelly Steele said, and I quote, Sharon Angle, however, has clearly stated that there is no separation between church and state, even though it is spelled out in the Constitution. I would like to offer a second wave of stupid pills to Steele. Kelly Steele, you must be overdosing on these. And the reason is simply, of course, because there is no place in the Constitution, no place that says that there's a separation of church and state. Most of us know that. That's not what this show is about. This show is about the tax-exempt status, how it got here, why it got here, and what it's done to the church militant in America. Let's begin. In 1948, Lyndon Baines Johnson, former President Johnson, ran in a Democratic primary in Texas. Texas at that time was a diehard Democrat state. A Republican could sooner get elected to presidency of Mars than to a statewide office in Texas. It appears from all historical documents that Johnson stole the election. Literally, a criminal act took place. He won by 83 votes, but there was all kinds of fraud going on that showed he probably didn't win against a man named Coke Stevenson. As a result of that, people began to mock him and called him Landslide Johnson. In 1954, he was running against a man named Mr. Doherty, who was a Roman Catholic. Now, Catholicism in Texas in those days was I won't call it taboo, but it was not something that was looked favorably upon by the Protestant majority. However, Johnson had very strong left-wing leanings. As we see from what he did as the president, we know that he was a socialist for sure, pseudo-communist maybe. And in those days, the McCarthy era, in those days, if you had a leftward leaning, you could be in big trouble. So, there were two organizations that turned their guns on Johnson and were helping Doherty. They were the Committee for Constitutional Government and the Facts Forum. Both of them were tax-exempt organizations. They were pouring large sums of money into the race, bludgeoning Johnson, showing his left-wing leanings, which were in effect helping Doherty in a race that probably he couldn't win, but it was a fight worth having. So, after Johnson won his primary, he submitted an alteration to the IRS code. When we come back from this break, I'm going to read to you the transcript from the Senate floor. You can see for yourself what happened. And we've got a great new song in today's show for those who want to put their neck under Caesar's heel. You're going to like it. Don't go away. I'll be right back.
There's room on the granite at Mount Rushmore for one more face. They're saving it for Randall Terry. Something about having to be dead first.
Moments with Moses. If you chance to come upon a bird's nest in any tree or on the ground, with young ones or eggs, and the mother sitting upon the young or upon the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the young.
Welcome back to the program, friend. After Johnson was just beaten mercilessly, even though he won his primary, by various right-wing conservative Christian groups, and by the way, one of the Protestant pastors said this is a religious war against Johnson, so religion played a role in it. Johnson went to the Senate floor because at that very time, the Congress was overhauling overhauling the tax codes of the IRS. And Johnson said, quote, "Mr. President, I have an amendment at the desk which I should like to have stated." The presiding officer, "The secretary will state the amendment." The chief clerk, "On page 117 of the House bill in section 501c3, it is proposed to strike out individuals and insert individual and strike out influence legislation and insert, quote, influence legislation which does not participate in or intervene in, including the publishing or distributing of statements, any political campaign on behalf of any candidate for public office." Mr. Johnson of Texas, "Mr. President, this amendment seeks to extend the provisions of Section 501 of the House bill denying tax-exempt status to not only those people who influence legislation, but also to those who intervene in any political campaign on behalf of any candidate for any public office. I have discussed the matter with the chairman of the committee and the minority ranking member of the committee and several other members of the committee, and I understand that the amendment is acceptable to them. I hope the chairman will take it to conference and that it will be included in the final bill which Congress passes. End of discussion. No debate. No people stepping back saying, wait a minute, what will be the impact of this? Wait a minute. What would Patrick Henry? What would Thomas Jefferson? What would George Washington? What would the founders of this republic? What would the preachers during the Revolution think about this? Nothing. It was just slipped in. Now, there is a debate raging to this very day over who actually is included in this prohibition. I'm going to read to you from the IRS tax code, okay? And you're going to see for yourself that many small local churches and some big denominations have taken this bit and bridle into their mouth, and they're not even required to. Listen, organizations not required to file Form 1023. That's the IRS form regarding 501c3 corporations. Some organizations are not required to file Form 1023. These include churches. Look, friends, it's right there on your screen. This is a cut and paste from the IRS's website. These include churches, interchurch organizations of local units of a church. In other words, a local parish. Conventions or associations of churches or integrated auxiliaries of a church, such as a men's or women's organization, religious school, mission society, or youth group. Before we go any further, there are many organizations out there saying, hello, the 501c3 status does not include churches. Yes, it includes religious organizations like Priests for Life or Americans United for Life or various pseudo-Christ-centered groups that fight against child killing or fight for traditional marriage or fight for other ethical issues that have a God-centered underpinning. So Johnson was after groups such as the ones that attacked him, which would really fit perfectly for Priests for Life or other pro-life organizations. I'm not picking on them in particular. There's literally scores of them across the country. So what has been the net effect of this? I want to read to you a quote from D. James Kennedy. I knew him personally. We were not close friends, but we were acquaintances. We visited personally. I was on his show, had lunch with him, talked shop between just the two of us. This is what he said about the impact of the 501c3 on Christian organizations, including churches who unfortunately had submitted their neck to the yoke. He said, quote, the federal government has proved a tremendous impediment to the ongoing work of Christians. In all the laws that they have passed since against Christian schools, gagging the church, taxation, and all other kinds of things that they have done, they have made it harder for the church to exercise its prerogatives and to preach the gospel. Take the last presidential election. There were numbers of things that I knew that I was never able to say from the pulpit, because if you advance the cause of one candidate or impede the cause of the other, you can lose your tax exemption. That would have been disastrous, not only for the church, but for our school and our seminary, everything. So you are gagged. You cannot do that. The IRS, a branch of our government, has succeeded in gagging Christians. You know, I have to say something. I greatly respect Dr. Kennedy, God rest his soul, but this, my friends, was an admission of surrender. He surrendered. He should have said, take your 501c3 gag back to hell where it came from. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, a new quick song, because some people like them, and we're going to look at what's this all about? Money, filthy lucre. And how do we get out of this mess? Don't go away.
The GOP, girly men on Prozac. We've never seen a fight we didn't run from.
Bolshevism is not a policy, it is a disease. Sir Winston Churchill. And now, as promised, a new song for those who bow to Caesar. Hello, Caesar, I'm a man pleaser. I'll do everything you say. I just have one favor, please, no hard labor, and throw a few crumbs my way. I'll sell my soul to Caesar for tax-exempt status today. I'll take the bridle and the bit. I don't give a whit about the teachings of the gospel and all the holy writ. Hello, Caesar, I'm a man pleaser. I'll do everything you say. I just have one favor, please, no hard labor, and throw a few crumbs my way. Thank you, you're very kind. Took a lot of time to write that, and even longer to perform. All right, anyway, we know that the 501c3 prohibits any electioneering, so just stop and think. Think of how Focus on the Family, Coral Ridge Ministries, all these huge mega churches, when it comes to election time, they don't just simply stand up and say, hey, no one can vote for Obama in good conscience because he's a baby killer. That's issue one. Then the second issue is, and I'm going to read again from the IRS website, is about lobbying. Listen to what it says. Quote, an organization will be regarded as attempting to influence legislation if it contacts or urges the public to contact members or employees of a legislative body for the purpose of proposing, supporting, or opposing legislation, or if the organization advocates the adoption or rejection of legislation. That's what it says. Now listen, think through this with me. Think through the insanity. What is the ultimate goal of the pro-life movement? To make legalized child killing illegal again. All right, now listen to me. That means you've got to get the rats and the traitors out of office and get righteous men and women in office. There's the electioneering part. And then you have to pass a law that outlaws all child killing. That has to deal with encouraging a legislative body to pass certain legislation. Think it through. The two key elements of prevailing against child killing, electing the right people and lobbying incessantly for the right laws, your legs are cut out from underneath you if you submit to the 501c3 yoke. It's self-defeating. We cannot win in our fight to keep marriage between a man and a woman, in our fight to end legalized child killing. We can't win. Friends, I don't mean to be unkind, but I am telling you in the presence of God, with heaven as my witness, the 501c3 tax-exempt status is a deal with the devil. I'm going to be right back, and we'll talk about what it's all about, Alfie, God or mammon. Don't go away. Appoint a wicked man against him. Let an accuser bring him to trial. When he is tried, let him come forth guilty. Let his prayer be counted as sin. George Washington said, it is impossible to rightly govern in this world without God and the Bible. Well, in the Bible, it teaches that Christ is over Caesar. In the Bible, it teaches that prophets and the people of God are required to confront evildoers by name. In the Bible, it requires that we pursue justice, that we defend the fatherless, including in the halls of power. So, folks, we have to choose who is Lord of the church, God or Caesar. Obviously, it's God. Well, Jesus said you can't serve God and mammon, God and money. And that, my friends, is what this is all about. These tax-exempt groups don't have to pay taxes, and somebody who files long form and gives a big contribution can deduct the amount of income tax they would have had to pay. So this is about money, and about money, and about money. But Jesus said you can't serve God and money. So At the end of the day, a 501c3 group cannot spend any money, zero, on an election, and only about 5% on lobbying for good legislation. If you claim to be a Christian organization, 0% for good men and women in office is a crime. And 5% for lobbying? No, that's not enough. Throw the 501c3 back to hell where it came from. God bless you.